Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, I'm Chet. Eva's with me, and we're going to talk about the Certified in Transformation for Supply Chain. Um, it's the latest in a series of ASCM APICS certifications. It's new or relatively new. It came out last year at the very end of the year, and some of us were able to take the exam before the end of 2023, and so we've had our certification now for uh, 9 months, 8 months. Uh, so anyway, Eva can talk a lot more about this because she helped to write the material that goes into the training for this particular certification. But what we thought we'd do today is just walk through the different modules and give you an overview of what's included in the course, and then you can make up your mind uh, if you want to participate or not. It's uh, it's a bit different, but very interesting. So the first module, there are only 4 modules. First of all, there are only 4 modules in this course. When you compare that to CSCP, Certified Supply Chain Professional, there are 8 modules in that, and CPIM. I don't know, there are 900 slides in the CPIM now.
I think
So
there's nine
it's,
modules.
yeah, 9 modules. So this one is relatively brief, and we just thought we'd run through it. So um, the first module has 3 sections, and it talks about supply chain transformations. What is it? The what is it they're considering in when they talk about supply chain transformation? And um, then in section B, value proposition and methodologies and organizational design takes you to the next step that says, here's what we think is important and valuable, uh, and how do we get more value out of what we have? And do we need to change our organizational design in order to make this work? And then the drivers, how do we get this off the ground, and how do we push through the company or get pulled through the company to create a supply chain transformation? So Eva, you want to jump in?
Well, I would add to that, under the transformation, you will learn how to understand what it's actually meant by a supply chain. What are the different types of supply chains? And what's their complexity? And that's something that's very important to understand. And methodologies, they could be using SCORE, or they may use Six Sigma or TRC. So that's what we're talking about there. And some of the drivers, one of the important drivers is the culture of the organization, and the unspoken assumptions that you get with a culture that, for example, not invented here. That's a syndrome that we get in many of our organizations, that if we didn't do it, it's not worth trying. And that's
Mhm.
something that you'd have to overcome when you're going through these transformations.
Yeah. And uh, one of the things in an earlier class today, one of the things we were talking about is, you know, uh, most of us have a relatively monolithic view of supply chain. If we're, say, we're in the auto industry and we're supplying, tier 2, tier 1 suppliers to the assembly operations, or maybe we're tier 1 to a supply to an assembly operation. We think about our supply chain that way, and we know the players from our position to where it gets consumed. But then if you step back and you say, well, we're a Kia or IKEA, however you want to pronounce that, and you're shipping your product all over the world, and it's going out through various retail stores around the world. That's a whole different supply chain, and the things that you find where you find value in the first one may not be even present in the second. So each one is going to be different, and what uh, Apex is looking for and what they talk about is the uniqueness and being able to take that and amplify that in each of the various conditions. So it's not a one size cookie cutter, one size fits all, but these are the sort of the general guidelines on how to start your transformation. So
I have a
module
question
two,
over there. I'm
sure,
sorry. I have a
that's all
question.
right.
In the first part, I mean, supply chain transformation. How do you know or where the need for the transformation born? I mean, maybe we usually in the plan know about continuous improvement, you know, those
Mhm,
type of methodologies for improvement. But I mean,
mhm.
I'm seeing a transformation. I mean, how do we know we're in the plan? How do we know, or where can we get the signal to start making or start working on a transformation? I don't know if I explain myself.
Yeah, I think so. Uh, the, although they're talking about supply chain transformation, um, what they're really talking about, Antonio, from that perspective, is they're looking at the supply chain and they're saying how can we move this supply chain from where it is to where we want it to be, and that where we want to be is in a digital mode as opposed to an analog mode, which is the way most of us run our supply chains, but to move it into a digital mode and completely transform the way we manage the supply chain. They're not going to be able, a company is not going to be able to do that without working with all of the nodes in their supply chain. And so the methodologies that they employ could be continuous improvement, or they could make it a specific thing and turn it into, a Six Sigma kind of change that they want to put in place, or they may come up with some other methodology that they think is going to work across the entire organization. But everyone in the supply chain, independent of where they are, is going to have to go through the training and development, and they're going to have to buy into the results.
I would add to that part of this, Antonio, you start with analyzing where you are on the supply chain maturity level. There's 5, I think, different levels, and you would want to say, okay, if I'm at the very bottom at stage 1, then I want to move from stage 1 to stage 2. What do I have to do to get there? That would be a transformation. And don't expect to get from 1 to 5 immediate. 1 to 2 might take you a year, depending on how close you are, or 2 to 3. So part of this transformation is moving along that stage of those supply chain maturity model. And so
Right.
you have to start analyzing first and determine, is this something that we want to change? Is this something we can change? And what do we need to do to make it change?
Right. And then how do we enable the various nodes to make the change?
Oh, okay. Got it. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, good question. Thank you.
Yep.
So then the second module talks about preparing for that supply chain transformation. And so there are 6 sections, 7 sections. If I could learn to count, I'll be good. That's why my inventory never balanced.
There you go.
Select supply chain transformation drivers, assess the supply chain current state. And so that goes back to what Eva was just saying. conceptualize the future state of your supply chain operations, uh, identify the initiatives to address the gaps. What do we need to do to move from 5 to 4? What do we need to do to continue to grow? And then initiate the transformation work streams and projects, because you're going to have to look across the entire supply chain. All the nodes are going to be involved, but not all the nodes are at the same level or the same position. And so each of them may have different things that they need to do. And so we need to initiate that and then develop and iterate the preliminary transformation business, and then perform the post-approval tasks. So these are the things that we have to do to prepare for the transformation. And that takes us back, I think, Antonio, to your question. How do you get involved? How do we involve all of the nodes? And this is pretty much where we go in and say, figure out where you are, tell us what you need to get to this point. You're at level 5 and you want to go to level 4, or you're at level 1, you want to go to level 2, however that I can remember. One is the
5.
Yeah, it's 1 to 5. And so we're at level 1 and we want to go to level 2. What do we need to get there? And some people may be there already. Some people may be a long way from there. But each one of the nodes needs to go through and figure out where they are and what they need to do next in order to move forward. Then that has to be put together in the work streams and the projects that are going to move the entire organization in the right direction. And then we develop and iterate that preliminary transformation. Okay, so that's what we cover in the second module of this course. This is a long module. I think it's the longest.
I think it's
of
the
the
longest
4.
one, yeah.
Yeah. And that moves us to module 3.
If I can add
Sure.
back in on
Yep.
module 2, it also covers a lot of SCORE, and we bring in a lot of the SCORE standards to help you with your identification and with your step functions of where you are. And it uses a lot of project management techniques to go through a lot of these areas. Okay.
And SCORE that you referred to is?
The supply chain operations reference.
Right. So if you're not familiar with the supply chain operation reference, go to ASCM.org and do the search button with that. and
You can search on SCORE, SCOR.
Yeah.
And it's a standard that I like the way Deanna explained it the other day. SCORE is you can think of it as a standard similar to ISO, but for the supply chain. And it covers all aspects of your supply chain and how you can measure and how you know what your performance is, and other parts of your supply chain.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So then we move on to module 3, which is executing the supply chain transformation. How do we make that happen? And so section A talks about adopting a change management plan. So which spine or backbone are we going to use for our change management? We make that decision and we start assigning the responsibilities. And then section B talks about designing and implementing the supply chain transformation work streams and projects, and then implement the governance and risk management framework. So we have to come up with a plan and get that adopted across the board. And then we have to work on the implementation, design and implementation of the transformation itself. and the work streams and the projects that are going to get us to where we want to go. And then what kind of governance, how are we going to manage all of this? And what's the risk involved, and how are we going to manage the various risks at each step of the transformation?
And I would add in here that this is where upper management must be involved. They have to be your champion. They have to support this so that you are successful. This is not a project that you can take on as a middle manager or as a supply chain manager at a plant. It has to come from above and get everybody on board, because it's such a huge project and a huge change that management has to be there, or you're going to have problems. Trust me, I lived it.
Yeah, trying to do something of this scope when you're in the middle is not possible in most companies. If you've got a 3-person company and you're the middle person, yeah, you may be able to manage that. But if you're in a major company, no, it's not going to work. So it has to be driven top down, but then the change itself has to be bottom up to make sure that everyone is trained and they understand what the new work rules are going to be, and they are given, authorized, and managed to take those new rules and go forward. So that happens from the bottom up, and we get the resulting transformation by making those two things work: top down, the driver, and bottom up, the actual work. So that takes us to module.
I have
Sure.
another question.
Yep.
Maybe I'm going too far, but you were talking about sponsors. You were talking about champions. I'm seeing score DS on the program. I mean, I can see, like, and again, maybe I'm going too far, but this is kind of like a supply chain transformation or project manager training. I
Exactly.
mean,
You're exactly right.
oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I'm seeing a lot of tools and a lot of things. So this is kind of a supply chain transformation project manager training. So it's
Correct.
cool. It's cool.
Yeah,
It's cool. Thank you.
its audience is really intended to be those people within the organization that act sort of like a consultant, that come in and help you do the transformation, or even external consultants that can come in and help you run the transformation. But yes, you're right. This is exactly training for project management for supply chain.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so module 4 is the review for the, as soon as I get my screen cleared here.
I think 4 is the shortest one.
Yeah, this is a really short module. And basically it's the assessment and then the communication as the project goes forward, or as it sort of rolls out. How do you keep it going? How do you know when you're there?
And it is bigger than just continuous improvement. We're talking a true step change here. As we know, continuous improvement, you do something, you analyze it, you fix it, and then you find the next problem and you just keep doing that. This is an actual change from one method or one way of doing business to another. It's a total transformation.
Right. And this actually is a repetitive process. What we're talking about here in the 4th module is really a repetitive process where we're constantly doing assessments of the transformation, seeing how it's gone that far, and what do we need to change in the plans that we put together in 2 and 3 to allow for the continuing transformation. And how do we read that? How do we make that? And that's where we communicate the results and we reflect on the transformation, but we also then go back and redo the things that aren't working quite as well as we want them to, or we put more resources into the things that have sped ahead so that they can continue to grow and pull the rest of us with them. So there's a lot of ins and outs to this, but you're right, Antonio. It's it's the project management aspect of this, and that's what makes it really good. From the certification perspective, the other certification classes that we teach, the CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, talk in generalities about the entire breadth of the marketplace at each of those 3 levels. This one talks about how do you get there, and you can pick you can put on your tool belt and put whatever tool you want on that belt. Here's what you need to do in order to transform your supply chain. And if you do it well, then what happens is you create a system that measures better than what you have today, and you find you need to go back and you need to reiterate some of the process changes you made, and it becomes at that point a continuous improvement program.
Yep, good.
So, questions? Come on.
There's also a section 5, a module 5 that talks about how do we solve problems through transformation, and it goes into how to look for breakthrough improvements, and how we abandon our old ideas and learn new capabilities. So that's the last section on this. It's a transformation roadmap.
Yeah. So, questions? No?
Not on my side. I'm pretty good.
Yes, not at this particular
Thank you,
point.
Antonio.
So
Okay.
are any of the people on here, Herman or Cesar or Jorge Ponce, are you working on transformations, or even Antonio, are you getting ready to do a transformation, or?
Not myself yet, but I'm pretty sure I will prepare for that. I mean, I won't depend on the project manager anymore, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, you know, using this information, apply it in the plan. Oh man, I don't need a project manager. And well, I can rely on an expert on supply chain matters. So that will be awesome. Awesome. I'm gonna take that certification.
Yeah, you can find the project and you can sell it to your managers and get them to become the champion and the sponsor. And you can be the evangelist that goes out and says, this is what we need to do. And then you work as the project manager.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was what I was thinking. Thank you.
Yep.
You can become the internal consultant for the project as well.
Yep. That's a fun job. I did that for almost 10 years. It's a great job.
Yeah.
Indeed, I did as well.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay. Thank you, Eva.
All right,
I
you're
think this
welcome.
is a wrap. All right.
Okay,
No more
thank you,
questions.
everybody.
We'll
Not
go
at the
home.
moment, but it's always interesting and quite exciting to join your lectures. Thank you for the opportunity. Although it's really late here, so I might sound a
Yes.
bit rosy.
Next time I'll try to do it when it's earlier for you.
Oh, do not worry about it. No problem. I'm always excited to
All
join
right.
in.
I'm glad you were able to join.
Well, thank you for the invite as well.
Thank-
Excellent presentation as always.
Yeah.
Quite
Thank
pleased.
you.
Eva and Chet, this is Jorge. Can you expand a little bit more on the practical usages? I mean, like, what are the other potential uses for the training? And in terms you were mentioning, like, okay, this potentially can be sold to management as this is the task that you could support with the training. Can you talk a little bit more about what are the potential uses for the training? Yeah, in my mind, I had something like, okay, yes, there's some level of transformation. There's a finite project that, I mean, it would not necessarily change the way we operate, but it would definitely be something that we have to apply change management right to it. I mean, like it's going to be a finite project that will change a little bit the landscape. So that's where I am right now, and interested definitely in seeing how this potentially help.
2 points that
that.
I would say, you can use this to identify risks and opportunities and help you to understand how to do that. Selecting appropriate philosophies and an approach that you want to use to make the change. The other one is that you learn how to apply system thinking to develop and analyze, verify and validate your concepts. So they can use this, you or your team can use this for smaller projects. It helps you to understand how to analyze those alternatives for a change and validate your concepts. Like I said earlier, it brings in some CPIM, it brings in some CSCP, it brings in a lot of project management techniques and methodologies, and a lot of SCORE standards. So those are helpful in just about anywhere, I think, in your organization, whether you're actually doing a transformation or a smaller type of change. In my opinion, that would be helpful anywhere.
Got it. Thank you.
And then Jorge, if you think about every aspect of our business is a part of the supply chain process. The supply chain process being from our supplier's supplier to the supplier to us, to our customer's customer, to the consumer. Every step along the way is part of the supply chain. And so it's something we need to look at, something we need to improve in order to get a real transformation. What's the end goal? Perhaps to have a digital twin so that you can model any other changes you want to make against the digital twin to figure out what the impact would be of making the change. We're not there, we don't have it, but going forward, how would we get there? And what are the other tasks? So even if you're at the shop floor level, what can you do there to improve the flow through your shop floor, which ultimately is going to have a favorable impact on your supply chain?
And it gets the people to learn how to do some critical thinking and analytics that they may not have a reason at this point to do.
And
Yeah,
going back
thank
to
you.
what we
Got it.
going back to what we were saying in our answer to Antonio, you may have to educate up in your organization. There are people out there who are doing this. If we could do that, we would be this much ahead of the competition in our particular marketplace. And so we can do that as well. Anything more? Going once? Going twice?
Not
Thank you.
promotional.
Thank you all for attending.
Well,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
Feel
you.
free to contact us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. Have a good
All
one.
right.
All right,
You as
thank
well.
you.
Have a lovely evening.
Have a
Cheers.
great night.
Cheers.
Thank
Good
you
night
all.
to you all too.